Well, it has certainly been a day in the NFL so far today. It has been a week in the NFL. It has been a wild ride, but hey, we are here to break down the Week 9 main slate for DFS, getting you set for what should be a pretty interesting slate. A lot of question marks here and a lot of questions to answer. We'll be doing that right now and drafting a snake draft live on air. This is the snake draft Q&A right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. My name is Jim Sannes. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com. Joined here, as always, by JJ Zachariason and Brandon Gdula. JJ is the editor-in-chief of Number Fire and FanDuel. JJ, Week 9 is coming up. How are you doing today?
I'm not just the editor-in-chief at Number Fire and FanDuel, Jim. I'm the leader of the snake drafts so far this season. I'm doing great because of that fact.
Not only are you the leader, you were gone last week, and Brandon and I still lost, which is...
I wanted to get a win for that, but then I realized that you guys aren't like, I mean, the loss was enough, so it's also fine. Like, it's still 3-2 too.
Like, it's tough to count because Ryan's better than all of us, so like, we don't want to punish us just because Ryan's better than us. I feel like we should get a pass. It's tough to beat Ryan. I think that we deserve a pass for that. Brandon Gdula is the managing editor of numberfire.com. Brandon, we have a hole to dig out of. Technically, it's my turn to win this week. So how are you feeling entering, knowing that is the truth?
I feel like I'm tied for second place. If JJ feels great for being in the lead, I feel like I should probably just say that I'm feeling like I'm in second place.
I feel like a loser, so I'm glad that you feel good. That's encouraging to me, at least, that we are there. What we're going to do for today is we're going to break down this Week 9 main slate and take your questions from YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter, no matter where you're watching. Get your questions in. We'll take them live here on the air to get you set for this Week 9 main slate. As always, make sure you are subscribed on your platform of choice because we are doing this every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we also have shows every other weekday at 4 p.m. as well. So again, hit subscribe, swing back, 4 p.m. Eastern, every weekday to get our insights here on the NFL for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and the NBA on Wednesday with Tom Vecchio as well. Now, we typically save questions for last, but this one is kind of a key one. I'm going to take Kyle's right now from YouTube. Is Jordan Love worth using in DFS this week? Does he have the upside to take advantage of the salary? Now, we were talking about this before the show, animatedly deciding this. And JJ, I've heard Brandon's take on this, and I know where he stands on Jordan Love and also this game in general, because like there is a big ripple effect of having Jordan Love versus Aaron Rodgers in this game. So what are your thoughts first on Jordan Rodgers, but then on how Jordan Love,
who is a person.
Correct. It's his brother. Yeah. I'm sure he's feeling great today. The impact that Jordan Love starting has in this game as a whole as well.
Yeah. Okay. So my stance is that I don't think that Jordan Love is an auto fade in DFS at 6K. And I'm approaching this from the perspective of just trying to be as open-minded as possible about his actual play. I mean, we saw improvement in the preseason. I think he looked way better than he did last year, at least. We know the weapons are around him and the system is there for a guy to thrive. I mean, we've seen Aaron Rodgers obviously thrive, and I'm not comparing Jordan Love to Aaron Rodgers. I understand the difference there. And then, what I was saying before we hit live here is that this matchup is not bad. If this was a very, very rough match, like if he was playing like Denver or something where, there's a low scoring environment, the Packers could easily just take it to the ground and not have to worry about playing catch up against Teddy Bridgewater. That'd be one thing, but you're facing an offense that, yes, has struggled this year, understandably. I mean, I get that they're not the same Chiefs offense that we saw last season, but the Chiefs, according to the numbers that I use in adjusted fantasy points allowed, they're still the fourth best matchup right now. Brandon made a good point about Taylor Heineke and Daniel Jones both not having good games against them, which is not wrong. I mean, that's the fear, but I'm also looking at, the perspective of, from the perspective of Jordan Love might have a higher ceiling than we think, just period. I mean, it's not that crazy to think that he could hit 20 to 25 points scoring in this game, which is what he needs to do if you're going to like win a tournament or something. I mean, you need that. And obviously there's a little bit more room for error for a guy like Jordan Love at 6K because you're able to get some really, really great players in your lineup elsewhere, right? So, you don't need the crazy ceiling necessarily or as crazy of a ceiling. But yeah, I mean, like I think he's fine enough. I haven't built enough to say definitively like how heavy I'll have Jordan Love, and I need to look at what the market is sort of saying and what his percent roster number might end up, generally being projected at. But I think it's fine enough. Like, I don't think that he's a terrible play. If you were looking at him from like a season long perspective, I have him as like a mid QB2 this week, and mid QB2s in fantasy can have spiked weeks. I mean, you can still be a top 10 option. So I think he's fine enough. I'm not going to go all in. I don't think it's one of those situations. Not like a running back who's stepping in, who's like 5K or something like that. Because you do need that ceiling at the quarterback position. But I think that he can provide that to some degree because the environment is not that bad.
And what does this do for your view of the Chiefs, guys? So mostly like Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, because my concern here is that the Packers are already, if you look at Brandon's pace numbers, are the slowest offense in football. And now you're adding in a quarterback who will likely lead to more rushing attempts, which grinds clock more. I'm concerned about volume. I'm not concerned about script because like it's still a decently tight spread. That's not my concern. I'm concerned about this game being so slow that it saps away volume from Mahomes and Hill. Where do you stand with regards to that?
I think it's fair. I mean, we also have to, again, try to be open-minded of a scenario where the Chiefs are able to just do big things ASAP in that game, and then the Packers aren't able to go with that kind of script offensively, where they're just not able to, if the Chiefs get out to like a 14-0 lead, then, early in that game, then all of a sudden the Packers aren't going to be able to run the football. I think that, the way that you guys are framing it is probably, the 20th to 80th percentile outcome range, like it's the most likely thing to happen for sure. But if you're looking at it from a GPP standpoint and just thinking a little bit outside the box, I mean, I just feel like anytime I know the Chiefs are playing the way they're playing, they don't have nearly as many explosive plays this year. And that's a huge problem for fantasy, but we know the personnel on that team. And we know that games with Kansas City can and will shoot out. Like we know that can happen. And that's why I don't want to say, no, it definitely can happen. But yes, it's a concern for sure. If you're building one lineup, if that's the case, then yeah, I'm going to be more off of the Chiefs because Aaron Rodgers isn't playing.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to view it for sure. They're not out of play, but it does impact their view. Okay, yeah. Brandon, we talked about Alvin Kamara under the assumption that Taysom Hill will be quarterback, and now touchdown Trevor Siemian is going to be quarterback for the Saints instead. How does it impact your view of Alvin Kamara? First for a salary cap, but then also for the snake draft later on.
So I think that overall Kamara's salary of 9,400 is a bit steep despite the good matchup because the offensive expectations are a lot lower here for this week. Also on the other side of this game, this is a big part of what you and I look at and talk about a lot, Jim. Calvin Ridley's not playing. That lowers the offensive expectations for the Falcons, and that just kind of reduces the chances that this game is a shootout. The proverbial shootout that can lead to big plays, a lot of red zone chances for Alvin Kamara. Now, I will say with Trevor Siemian at quarterback, I feel much more confident in Alvin Kamara's goal line work.
Correct.
But I still don't really think that he's in a good enough spot to prioritize from a salary cap standpoint at 9,400. I do not think that he is. I'm not saying he's a fade. I'm not saying he's a horrible play. I'm saying he's not going to be a core play for me if I'm building a cash game or a single entry lineup. I don't see Kamara making that in at that salary for this week. But for a snake draft, he might be the 101.
Yeah. Potentially, yeah. I think it's either him or Eckler, honestly. I think that's where I'm at right now. I will say, though, touchdown Trevor Siemian did score on his own read in the Gator Bowl back in 2013, defeating Dak Prescott in Mississippi State. So let's not underestimate his 4.38 speed in this scenario. Okay, JJ, before I talk more about touchdown Trevor Siemian, let's lock us in and get the snake draft underway.
Okay. What spot do you guys want? I kind of want 3.
I don't really care.
I want 3. I'm going to get 1 because I think it's probably the worst week to have the first pick this week this year.
It says it there. Oh, wait, there we go. Okay, I got 2. Brandon got 1.
I've been pretty right on. Oliver, we know you're lurking. We know you're out there.
I've been pretty right on this, but yeah, despite all the concerns, I do think Kamara is the 101. It's probably between he and Austin Eckler, as Jim said. Love that Chargers-Eagles game. It does have concerns, but virtually every game has some concerns this week. Yeah. The main concerns with that one are like Jim mentioned, these teams kind of don't allow you to go downfield very often. That can just sort of grind clock, keep things underneath. But that'd be good for Austin Eckler. But despite what I said about Kamara not being a core play for me in a salary cap format, I do think I'm just going to take him and see what comes back to me.
Do you agree, JJ, of going Kamara over Eckler here at 1.01?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think Dalvin's still a fine play too. I mean, I
Oh
don't.
yeah,
I have Eckler. I have Eckler too, and I'm gonna get Eckler. Because I'm assuming Brandon's gonna go Kamara, but I really
No, I'll
wanted the
take Eckler now.
103. I really wanted the 103 because I felt like Dalvin. Because I
Zeke.
think that there's exactly the Dalvin Zeke comp. Because I'm in a really tough spot now at 105 because Dalvin Zeke is the best start that
I
you could
agree.
get out of these. Yeah.
I agree. I'm in. I hadn't thought about this beforehand, but I'm in. I'll
That's
take
why I
Dalvin
wanted
Zeke
that's
all
why I
day.
wanted the 3 whenever I was, beforehand.
See, I didn't think about this beforehand because I was too busy spiraling on Twitter to like think about this. But
Yeah.
now that I see it, yeah, I'll take Dalvin and Zeke. I think that both these guys, from your options, talked about Eckler before, but with Dalvin, massive workload, really tough matchup. The Ravens have not allowed 60 yards to a rusher yet this year, but Dalvin can work in the passing game. I like that game. Zeke, just a great role at home, not the best rush defense. I'll take that all day. Now, JJ goes to Tyreek Hill. I think that makes a lot of sense. Given the running backs off the board, anybody else you considered there, JJ, for that pick?
Yeah, I mean, I could have gone running back, but I saw a pretty big gap after Zeke to the next running back, and then at wide receiver, I sort of had Tyreek in his own tier because I think you could go you can go different directions. I did have Diggs as my wide receiver too, who Brandon just took, but I saw Tyreek giving me a better advantage at his position than the next running back that I would have taken because I think there's a couple running backs where you could go there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Brandon gets Diggs and Joe Mixon. I was planning on taking Mixon. I didn't know if he'd get there, but I think that was the right call there. Thought process for you on Diggs and Mixon?
I had a top 5, and they went in order basically. So I didn't know what I was going to do at the turn. I don't like Stephon Diggs as much as I would like to, with the fact that they're massive favorites, but they still throw the ball plenty when they're up. Stephon Diggs seems like just a never-ending regression story. Joe Mixon's workload was still really good last week. I had him a bit of like a tier above Aaron Jones with the quarterback situation. So I was kind of just out of obligation that I had those guys at the top of the next tier, but I did have a big teardrop there, which is why it took me a bit to pick.
Yeah, I think that was a really tough spot. I also didn't like my options there. JJ went Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb with your next 2 picks. Jones should get volume. Nick Chubb, I think, had a better role than we might have realized last week, given that like Dearness Johnson got targets, but like Chubb was still seemed like the guy they preferred
Yeah,
overall.
tough spot for them too. I mean,
Yeah.
I considered like I still had Chubb actually in that tier where I got Aaron Jones. Like I think that he still has that kind of upside, obviously, but
Right.
the receiving work still wasn't great, so that's a little bit scary. But yeah,
For me, I went with Jamar Chase just because I think that it's a decent game. I like the target numbers he's been getting. I like the effectiveness on those. I think that should continue this week. Lamar Jackson to me is the number 1 quarterback this week. Could have gone with Josh Allen, but Lamar gets me correlation with Dalvin Cook for that game. And then so Brandon went with Josh Allen and Deebo Samuel. Are you coming around on my boy Deebo now?
Oh my gosh, this again. All I said was he's hard to project because he gets so many targets behind the line of scrimmage.
He's hard to project because he's the best receiver in football. You know,
And he
sometimes
also
that causes complications.
He has mega regression coming his way on downfield passes, but I was considering Devontae, but I couldn't quite get there myself.
Oh man, this is terrible. I gotta go Devontae.
it was. I couldn't.
To.
I honestly, I couldn't go Devontae there because I had Aaron. Like, there's no way that Jordan Love's gonna be able to support Devontae and Aaron Jones
Right.
the way that I would need him to. I'm just gonna go with Mahomes with just to stack him with Tyreek because I feel like he's probably the QB3.
That was the poopiest snake draft we've done all year in terms of like guys I actually wanted to use. This pool is thin, guys.
It's thin. It's thin.
It's rough.
Right where Brandon was at with Deebo was where things really got shaky.
There were like multiple teardrops, and where it got gross. Like the teardrop after the top 5 was terrible. The one you were talking about with Brandon was bad too. So let's go to Brandon first. You got Amari. That's kind of fun. I can get behind that. I love Dak in that game. I think that Amari is always a good option. So I think you did the best with what you had. You just kind of were put in a bad position by the way the order broke.
Yeah, like I said, I think there was a clear top 5 from a snake draft format, and picking first, I got like a weak number 1 pick. And I'm not complaining. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
at the turn, I couldn't really plan. I mean, I could have planned, assuming it went the 5 that I had, but didn't really have a great feel of what to do there. I like Joe Mixon plenty this week. His salary is 7,400 as well. I think he's going to be very much in the play for like a cash game, single entry sort of vibe for me this week. Stephon Diggs, great matchup overall. They're going to put up points. It's hard to dislike Diggs there. And I got the stack with Josh Allen. And then honestly, it came down to like, do I like Devontae more than Debo with the quarterback downgrade? And I decided not. And then it was between like Devontae Booker, Myles Gaskin, or Amari Cooper. And I just felt like if one of those guys is going to put up 25, it's probably Cooper. So I went with Amari there, going with the receiver in the flex.
I fully agree with that thought process. Grim Fan is saying no fighting, play nice. Grim Fan, we don't have to fight when he takes Debo, when he respects the greatness that is Debo Samuel. We don't have to fight them. We're on the same page. This is great. JJ, you did get the stack with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, running it back with Aaron Jones. And I think that where you took those guys makes sense. I am mad you took Justin Jefferson. I was trying to find him. Didn't realize you had taken him. Was searching around the player pool. Couldn't see him. Was really flustered there for a bit. But thoughts on your team for you?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I don't mind it. I don't, totally love the Green Bay Kansas City game, as we alluded to earlier, but there are a lot of good players in that game. And the fact that I have Mahomes and Tyreek, they still have a high implied team total, so they should still be able to score points. And then you just got to hope that Aaron Jones is able to see a lot of work in the backfield. Austin Eckler, we already talked about, should see a nice workload, good matchup for him. It's great that he's seeing goal line work this year. And then with Nick Chubb and Justin Jefferson, with Chubb, it's really just a play on the potential stealing that he has every week. And I actually think that game is decent. I don't love it to death, but this slate is just not great. So I think in the context of the slate, the game's pretty good. And then obviously that Baltimore-Minnesota game is pretty good too, arguably the best on the slate. And so because of that, I just wanted a piece of it. So I went with Justin Jefferson.
Well, that Cleveland-Cincinnati game is why I took Jamar Chase. It's a decent game with a decently high total, tight spread, not the best defenses on the planet. It's not a fast game, but it's not, I think the other stuff grades out well. I kind of just wanted to get a lot of exposure to Ravens-Vikings once I had Dalvin Cook, because I think that's the best game to stack on the slate, potentially. I'm leaning towards that one being number 1 because it's the best quarterback on the slate. You've got a great running back. You've got 4 great wide receivers, depending on if Rashad Bateman's able to go. I mean, at least 3 with Marquise Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. So I like that game all around and feel good about the way things broke there. Okay, let's shift on over to some questions now and take those to get you all set for this slate here this weekend. And let's start things off with Elias asking, desperate for a win at 3-5 in non-PPR. Good to know that you're going to try here. I need to help pick 2 out of Devontae Booker, Myles Gaskin, Manny Sanders, and Chuba Hubbard. JJ, which 2 are you leaning with in that scenario?
I am going to go with the first 2. I'm going to go with Devontae Booker and Myles Gaskin. Good matchup for Gaskin. Decent matchup for Booker. Decent enough. Manny Sanders coming off a goose egg last week. It's non-PPR. That's a big tiebreaker for me to go running back as opposed to wide receiver. And, if we know for sure that CMC's out, I think you have more of a question with Chuba. But I think CMC might still play, but not get a full workload, which just kind of muddies that entire situation. So I think just going with Booker and Gaskin makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's the way to sound right now, is if McCaffrey will play and be limited, and that is not great for anybody involved. So I'd agree with what JJ said. Grim Fan, living up to the name. This is pretty grim, Grim Fan. Tajay Sharp or Nelson Aguilar. I would go Aguilar here, but good luck. Joseph is asking JJ, if Cole Beasley can't go, do you like Bateman or Van Jefferson more? So Cole Beasley missed practice once again today. Bateman missed, but it sounds like he'll be good to play, whereas Van Jefferson is playing. Matthew Stafford is also not quite at full health right now. He's missed practice this week with a back injury. So what's your view of these 3 based on what we know right now?
It's tough. I really like, so I think Cole Beasley in a full PPR format is probably just safest of the group, but if you don't want to go that direction, that's fine. I like all 3 of them this week. So this is a really, really tough one. Bateman having that injury right now, not practicing today, it does sound, they do sound optimistic. If you want to use that as a tiebreaker, I really like Van Jefferson. And I say that because we've seen splits now without Deshaun Jackson in the lineup or not really running many routes at all the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, Deshaun Jackson ran 3 routes, and Van Jefferson was very, very close to the number of routes run as Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp were. Last week, Deshaun Jackson was inactive, and Van Jefferson ran just as many routes as Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So
Despite
he's going to be on the field.
In that game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome.
And this game environment, we were just talking up the Minnesota-Baltimore one. I'd argue that if this Tennessee and Rams one were on the main slate, we would be talking about it similarly, or at least sort of similarly. So I think the game environment's good. I trust that offense. So I would say if you read more about Bateman, if both were healthy, maybe I would go Bateman. But I think it's like a 51-49 sort of thing. If you read more about Bateman this weekend and he's not healthy or they're iffy or he's a game time decision or something like that, I might just go with Van Jefferson and play it safe because I really think that Van's role, I just think he's incredibly undervalued in fantasy right now. And his role looks really good without Deshaun Jackson there.
Yeah, I think that he's awesome. Love Van Jefferson for sure. Grim fan, Steelers to beat the Bears in a survival league. How confident is Jim after last week's pick? I talked someone, I think it was DJ, out of going with the Eagles who won 44-7 into using the Bengals who lost to the Jets. So Grim, why are you asking me, Grim fan? That seems poor taste. Anyway, again, sorry, DJ, but I actually do like the Steelers here. I would mention, Grim fan, that they play the Lions at home next week. So you might want to save them. But if you don't want to do that, I'm okay with the Steelers here. JJ, I had been slacking you because I was considering betting the Steelers. And it sounds like you are also in on Pittsburgh for this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people are going to look at what the Bears did last week and see it as sustainable. Maybe it is, like with what Justin Fields did offensively. I would argue, though, that this could be pretty rough on that offensive line, this matchup with the Steelers pass rush. And that's one of the main matchups that I'd be concerned about for the Chicago offense and why the Steelers could end up, beating the spread and looking pretty good in this game. So I would be pretty confident in the Steelers, but the Mike Tomlin era Steelers have lost some really, really bad games in the past. So I would not be shocked if something happens here. That's why even saying the Lions next week, like short week, you just never know with the Steelers. But I think they're
coming off a bye.
Yeah, I think they're a pretty good bet though this week.
Yeah, I'd agree. Okay, let's talk to Francis. Would you flex Gainwell, Rondale, or Traquan Smith with Sammy Watkins also being available? Brandon, we are a pro Rondale Moore conglomerate. I don't know if that's the right word to use for us anyway. But AJ Green likely out this week because he's on the COVID list right now. Would you go with Rondale of that group, not knowing what Kyler's status for Sunday is as of yet?
That's the issue. It seems like it's going to be game time decision there with Rondale. I would say Rondale for sure. If not, I mean, these like all could be really good options, but they all have some question marks. Gainwell's role actually got worse without Miles Sanders last week somehow. You could maybe write it off as game script related, but that seemed like not the case. So, I mean, my projections have Gainwell by a hair, but I don't feel great about that.
Yeah.
Like, this is a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I right now I'd say more, presuming that Kyler does start. So long as Kyler plays.
I think we'll know. We'll get a Shefty bomb at 11:46 p.m. Eastern. I think that's we typically do. So I think we'll hopefully know by then. Yeah. And if it is Rondale, if it is Kyler, go Rondale for sure.
Are we gonna be shocked though if Kenneth Gainwell has a decent role this week because of a probable negative game script? Like that's
shocked by anything with that team. Honestly.
Yeah, of course. But I actually think that this sets up obviously to be. I mean, I'd rather play like a Boston Scott over Kenneth Gainwell, but I actually. In a PPR format, I still don't think Gainwell's like that bad of a flex.
If Herbert goes full Herbert, like anything's like it'd be a Gainwell script there, which is possible because he's Justin Herbert and he's good at football. I want to stick with Brandon for this one. Mike Gesicki or Dallas Goedert? The reason I want to stick with you is because we talked a lot about Goddard on the podcast this week, but that was before we knew Devontae Parker was going to sit out this week. So now you take Devontae Parker out of the fold, and it's Mike Gesicki at home against Houston in a game that I still like for stacking, despite Parker being out, because we've seen Tua put up points against bad defenses without Parker. That's what we get here again. Gesicki 19 or 20% target share in the 2 games with Tua without Devontae Parker. Is that enough to put him above Goddard for you or not?
This is like super thin, so this might be a FanDuel DFS question with their salaries being similar. again, yesterday I would have said Goddard for sure. I still love Dallas Goddard, but I do think that Gesicki would get the edge here. With my new projections, I have him projected for just about half more target, better air yards for him than Goddard long term. So can't really go wrong process wise, but I would lean Gesicki here.
I think I would lean Gesicki, but it's very, very, very close. Also, George Kittle, if we're talking FanDuel, is in that same range too, and I like Kittle a lot at $6,000. Let's go to JJ for this one, talking some, I think, streaming quarterbacks here from Artemis. Jordan Love, Tyrod Taylor, Justin Fields, or Daniel Jones. Not bad options on there, honestly. Who do you prefer of that group?
Yeah, I think we can knock Fields off this list. And I say that just because the matchup against Pittsburgh that I talked about earlier with the pass rush, it's just scary. I mean, obviously there's a ceiling there. We saw it last week. It's just a little bit scary. I think I would prefer Daniel Jones over Jordan Love straight up. The matchup's not bad for Dimes. We just don't have as big of a sample for Jordan Love. So I'd go Dimes over Love. Now it comes down to Tyrod and Daniel Jones. I think I'm going Daniel Jones over Tyrod just because he's coming off that injury. I think that if we get another, sample of him performing as he did earlier in the season, then, ask me this question next week. It might be Tyrod. I don't know their matchups, but it might be Tyrod. But I think of this group, I would still go with Daniel Jones, especially with all their weapons being healthy now. Kenny Golladay should play. Kadarius Toney is going to play. No Sterling Shepard, but you finally have a set of 3 wide receivers who can play very specific roles. I think Daniel Jones is actually in a decent spot.
I'd agree with that. I think the certainty there is good. Tanantha is asking for thoughts on Jeffrey Wilson Jr. potentially coming back this week and its impact on Elijah Mitchell, especially with Hasty getting receiving work. What I would say here is that the 2 avenues to getting a lot of points in DFS are passing game work and touchdowns. And if you take away passing game work's not there already for Mitchell, take away touchdowns, that's a really tough setup. I think that if I'm looking at like a run first running back this week in DFS, I want Damian Harris. Now, if this is season long, I think you still use Eli Mitchell because we don't know what Wilson's role will be, and I don't want to take Mitchell out because they seem to like him a lot. But for DFS, that's enough where I'm okay avoiding Eli Mitchell for this week. Let's go back to JJ here and talk some defenses. Which defense has the best ceiling this week? Between San Francisco facing the Cardinals, depending on Kyler Murray's status there, Arizona facing San Francisco, Miami facing Houston, and Las Vegas facing off with Danny Fumbles and the New York Giants this week.
If you're looking at from a ceiling standpoint, I would say if we get news that Kyler's not playing, I would go San Francisco. And then I would probably, if Kyler's playing, I might go with Vegas from like a ceiling standpoint, because we know turnovers are what's going to generate those points. And Daniel Jones is a turnover machine. I would easily say Miami if Tyrod wasn't playing, but with Tyrod back, they're just, more of like a very average streamer this week. So let's just go with Vegas from a ceiling standpoint. But if Kyler Murray doesn't go, I would go with San Francisco.
Okay, let's go stick with JJ here and talk about a trade from Brock. Would you trade Amari Cooper and JD McKissic for Terry McLaurin? They'd have to drop McKissic anyway with David Montgomery potentially coming off IR this week. It's a forward-looking thing because Brock is 7-1. Would you do this trade?
I don't know. It just feels like a very lateral move to me.
I just want Amari. I want to keep Amari personally.
Yeah, that's kind of where, Terry McLaurin hasn't been performing over the last couple of weeks. Peripheral wise, he's going to look better than Amari just because the environment that he's in. But I kind of want to just stick with a guy who's in one of the best offenses in the league. So I'd probably stick with Amari in this case. And try to find a way. I don't mind, if you're going to drop a guy like McKissic, I don't mind pairing him with someone to upgrade a spot. That's exactly what you should be doing. And McKissic has value. But I think that I would stick with the Amari side here.
I want a quarterback tied to Dak Prescott versus one tied to Taylor Heineke. When their upside's pretty similar, I would take that route there. Jack is back with the Garfield avatar. Love it, Jack. Thank you. Welcome back. Would you start Boston Scott or Javonte Williams? Brandon, what are your numbers saying here between Scott and Javonte for this week?
About dead even. Both are dealing with committees. Both are in decent games for sure, but Boston Scott's in a committee with 2 other backs. Williams is in a committee with 1 other back. In game script probably sets up well or better for Williams here than Boston Scott, who could get a little bit scripted out if the Chargers invite you to run on them, which is the concern. But as you mentioned, there's a decent chance that Philadelphia does play from behind based on what we've seen from them all season. So I would lean Javonte here pretty confidently.
Okay, let's go to B-dubs here. Eli Mitchell or Cordero Patterson? JJ, this one's kind of tough because I like Cordarrelle's role more, but I hate everything else about the situation for Cordarrelle. They are on the road. They're facing the Saints. Offensive expectations pretty low. It's tough. Where do you go here for Mitchell versus Patterson?
Yeah, the problem is I don't think Mitchell's matchup is. I mean, it's better than what Cordarrelle Patterson is like sitting with right now. But Mitchell, like you said earlier, he's not seeing any work through the air. He hasn't seen a target over the last couple of weeks. I would probably still go with Patterson here, just because I think the volume through the air can make up for that environment and that matchup. But I think it's really, really close. Like if you looked at rankings, they're probably like back to back.
Yeah, I would expect that as well. Okay, one final one here from DJ. I got to get DJ's question in since I messed him up last week again. Sorry, DJ. Adam Thielen or Emmanuel Sanders? He also has Jerry Jeudy available to him. I kind of like Adam Thielen this week. I know that the Bills are in a really good spot, but like Thielen's actually getting downfield looks now. We know the red zone role is there. I think the Vikings are kind of feisty in this game. All right, guys. Am I dumb to go Thielen over Manny and Jerry Jeudy? Am I going to let DJ down again?
No, Thielen all day. You're just second guessing yourself because of the apparent DJ thing that happened last week with the survival. I wasn't here, DJ. I would have stopped
JJ
Jim.
Would not have let you down. Exactly.
I would have totally said the Bengals were going to lose to the Jets. I would have helped you out, but I was out.
Only so much we can do. Sorry. I was trying to mute myself because the dog is barking and I just couldn't turn it back on. This mic is like 6 years old, so I'm old and washed, as is the microphone. That is all that we have here for today on the Snake Draft Q&A. As mentioned, we have a lot of good stuff here on the FanDuel Podcast Network. You can check out JJ's The Late Round Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Late Round Podcast there. We also have our DFS preview up. You can find that by searching for the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. DJ has put my mind at ease saying that I'm fine. Thank you, DJ. I appreciate it. I will rest easier this weekend knowing that. JJ, your time is gone to win. That was last week. So good luck to you. Not that it matters for the snake draft, given that, just you got to wait 3 weeks for your next win.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to get that W this week, though.
Oh, okay. Calling his shot. Joe Namath here on the pod or on the stream. You can find JJ on Twitter at LateRoundQB. Brandon, appreciate your time as always this week and have a fantastic weekend to you.
Thanks, Jim. Best of luck this week.
Let's get some Debo Samuel deep targets. Let's go. I'm on Twitter at Jim Sannes. Brandon's on Twitter at Gdula13. Big thank you to Joy Affleck, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Joy, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your lineups. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.